Okay. I just share the screens.
Perfect.
Okay. So you can interrupt me anytime. I can take any questions during my presentations and also at the end. So, like when David asked me to talk about the recovery and training stuff, I was going to think like if I want to talk about the actual uh method to get the recovery or just talk about the more concept. And I decided to talk about the more concept of the training and recovery because recovery is so complex and it need to be individualized. So I thought it's kind of important to understand the concept of the training and recovery here. And you can depend on your situation, you can make your own recovery protocols. So that today's presentations, the goal is like probably that in some extent the topics, the contents are familiar with everyone's, but like maybe not like you know the concept, but you don't know like much about in details. Like, oh my gosh, that's actually what it is. Those kind of the moment. I hope everyone has it. So that's my goal for the topics, like talking about the training and recovery in aerobic exercise. Oh. David, you can interrupt me anytime. So this is quick my background. So I'm from Japan. I did my undergrad in Japan, the Kobe universities, and I came to the US and did my master at the University of Arkansas, PhD postdoc at the UConns, and I'm at Texas Tech right now as assistant professors. And I gave my presentation last year, so I interact with a lot of people in the team, individuals. So maybe most of you know me, but I just like introduce myself just a little bit. My area of interest is like heat hydration, athlete monitoring and recoveries. So we do a lot of work in the heat chambers. This is a picture I was still at the UConn's when US women's team came. We did a lot of cooling study on the top right corners of the cold water immersions. And also I'm doing the hydration studies. And the other topic is I'm doing a lot of study with athletes in terms of the monitoring, the training load and recovery stuff. Like on the top center top picture, it's about the GPS monitoring the training load, and top right corner, top bottom corner is OOP, like recovery, sleep monitoring, those kind of stuff I'm doing with athlete. That's my area of the research and sports science consulting and also teaching. Okay.
Interrupt for a second. The reason why we have Yaski on the team is for consulting and for helping us with these webinars. So, with that being said, he's here as an asset for you guys, for all the athletes. So, if you do need help with, let's say you're going to Hawaii and you need help with heat acclimatization, or you're going into altitude, or you need help with hydration, he's here for you. So you can go ahead, you can reach out to him, hire him, talk to him, use him as a resource. So you can get the information you need or work through any situation or problem you have. So just wanted to mention that, Yaski. Go ahead.
Okay, so just start with some kind of basic exercise physiology. So everyone like is working to improve these three concepts no matter what level it is. Like from the Olympic athlete to the recreational like aerobic runners. Everyone's like doing the endurance activities, training for to improve the endurance capacities. They are targeting these three items, including improving the VO2 max, lactate threshold, and running economies. And those three items can predict pretty much very accurately the aerobic performance. And there are so many ways to improve these three items, but that's the goal of the trainings. So most of you are already trained for that long period of time, and the VO2 max is pretty much already reached to the plateaus. Because after a certain period of time of the trainings, your VO2 max is no longer improved. So main goal is probably lactate, improving the lactate threshold and like economies. That's the goal of the trainings probably. And you can see on the bottom the figures. It's about the VO2 max. Like it's like okay, hold on. How you can improve the VO2? So VO2 max is cardiac output times ABO2 difference. ABO2 difference is how much you can extract oxygen at the working muscle. That's the ABO2 difference. And the cardiac output is more like the part sending the blood to the working muscle. So VO2 max consists of the two components, sending the oxygen to the working muscle and how much muscle you can extract from the blood into the muscle. These are the two components. And if you break down just a little bit more, cardiac output consists of stroke volume times heart rate. So you need to improve stroke volume. You need to increase stroke volumes in order to increase the cardiac output. In order to increase the ABO2 difference, the capacity to extract the oxygen at the working muscle, you need to increase the blood flow and you need to increase the capillary and the mitochondria density and numbers. So that's the kind of the goal what you are doing for the daily base. For example, like long throw distance, one of the big goal is improving the recovery. But the other big goals, this is probably the main goal of the long throw distance, like slow jogging, it's increasing the number of capillaries and the number of mitochondria. So it's slow jogging also improve these kind of components. So that just like I wanted to have one slide to talk about the adaptation to the aerobic trainings. So why do we monitor the training and recovery? Like it sounds fancy, but we are not doing because it sounds fancy. So everything like the balance of the volume and intensity and recovery are super important. If you don't have a balance between those components, you cannot improve the performance. Or you cannot maximize the effectiveness of the training. So that's why we are monitoring training and recovery in order to optimize the balance of the training and recoveries. And if you don't have a good balance, of course you are going to be overtrained and the performance decrease, or you don't see the adaptation from the trainings and the increase in the chronic fatigue illness and the overuse injury or overtraining syndrome. So basically, if you do too much and if you don't have enough recoveries, your performance decrease or you don't see any adaptations. So that's why we are monitoring the training and recovery objectively, because if we don't have an objective monitoring, so we don't know if your training is balanced or not. Okay, that's why we are doing the monitoring and recovery. So optimizing the training. So like one big concept is like you need to progress the overload. If you don't overload for your training, your body just used to that training load, and you don't see like adaptation anymore. So it's important to progressively increase the stimulus of the trainings, and that increase in the training adaptations. But if you don't have enough training stimulus and you are going to undertrain, that means you don't see the adaptations. You don't increase the adaptations. Or sometimes you lose the adaptations that you get from the trainings. And the overreaching is the decrement of the performance period in the short term. But if you have enough recovery after that, you can improve the performance. However, if you are in the overtraining phase, you pretty much lose all the benefit of the training. You don't see any adaptation of the training or improvement, and you also increase the risk of the recovery injuries. So that's why it's like there are so many phases in trainings. Right, it's probably you already know this kind of concept, but this is very important to just emphasize one more time, because in order to have enough, in order not to getting the overtrains and in order to get the overreaching, that's why we are monitoring the balance of the training and recovery. Okay, so this is just a little bit of the, this is an infographic of the actually the training phase. Maybe concept-wise you know this, but I just wanted to make it very clear. So if you are training here, the phase one, if you are trained, like your performance decrease in a short period of time because that your training induced the fatigues. Okay, that's the phase one here. But if you have enough recovery after following the training, your performance level increase. Okay, so the y-axis is actually y-axis is the performance level. So this is the baseline here, and you get fatigued, and your performance decrease temporarily because of the fatigue from the trainings. But if you have enough recovery, your performance increase, and you are going higher than the baseline. This is what training does. You are actually making a new baselines and after that adaptation of the performance here. But if you don't have enough recoveries, your performance keep decreasing, and this it's going to be overtrainings. Okay, this is like the basic concept of the training adaptations, and you are just keep doing this phase over and over. Like if you have enough if you have good balance of the trainings and recovery, you can keep doing this phase over and over and it keep increasing the performance. And I want to talk about just a little bit about the overreaching here. So overreaching is a systematic attempt to the overstress body for the short period of time. So it's under control. The big difference between overreaching and overtraining is overreaching is under control and overtraining is not under control. And the overreaching allows for stronger stimulus in the future. So you can see on the figure here. So temporary decreasing, but after the recoveries, your performance increasing and just keep going, just progressively like your performance increasing. But you need a caution. So overreaching, the difference between overreaching and overtraining is really small. So if you don't have enough recovery after the intense exercise, you can be overtrained, even though you are thinking your period of the overreaching. So again, short period performance decrement followed by the improved performance and the functions due to the recovery. That's the overreaching. So overtraining is unexplained decrease in the performance and the function for years and months or weeks. Normally months or weeks. The week, if it's weeks, you can still in the overreaching phase. But sometimes people consider weeks of the fatigues as the overtrainings. And if you are in the overtraining phase, you can, just short recovery period doesn't do anything. You just need a full recoveries. And you have a lot of probably decrements in the bodies from like many different aspects of the bodies. I'm going to talk about this here. So overtraining symptoms, of course, decrease in the performance, but chronic fatigue. But you also feel stressed mentally, and you don't have motivations. You don't enjoy doing the exercise, or loss of the weight. You're losing a lot of weight during the overtraining phase, and the increased number of infection because your immune system decreased a lot during the overtraining phase, so you are getting sick or illnesses. That's one of the symptoms of the overtrainings. And physiologically, you can your heart rate increase and blood lactate level increase during the exercise. So we are monitoring. It's super important to having enough recovery because you don't want to get overtrained. This all the symptoms. If you already have this kind of symptom, your performance decreased. There is you you are there is no point doing training and you don't see any adaptation from the training. Just keep decreasing the performance. And there is no way to overtrain predicting the overtraining. So that's why it's really have to make sure you have enough recovery like during the training. If you don't have enough recovery, there is no point like anything you can show like you are overtrained until you get actually the symptoms. There is no biological markers that detect overtraining as well. The most difficult part of the overtraining is like okay, let's say you feel like you have enough recoveries, and if you have enough recovery, if even though if you feel like you have recoveries, you might probably not enough recovery. That can induce the overtraining and increase the heart rate, for example. But if you actually have enough recovery, and if you have too much recovery, that also increase the heart rate. So you don't know if you don't have actually monitor your recovery state, you are having a too much recovery, or you are actually optimizing the recovery, or you don't have enough recovery. So it's really complex. So that's why a lot of people like get overtrained, even though overtrained is widely recognized. And just talk about the tapering. So tapering is the peaking for the performance. And after the training periods and reducing the training volume and intensity, normally it happens before the major competitions. You can increase the performance, but it only lasts like for about three weeks. And I'm going to talk about the reason later. But like the tapering is basically achieved by decreasing the training volume and intensity. Like in other words, it's recoveries. So you only can maintain for a certain period of time. So if you are past a certain period of time, your performance just purely decrease. The recovery is not going to be recovery. That is not recovery. It doesn't recover the body. It's just going to be training. So it's for the tapering purpose. The optimal recovery is really important as well. And if you have enough tapering, optimal recovery period during the tapering, your performance increased. But it doesn't result in the deconditioning because recovery amount of recovery is optimized. And yeah, you can. It depends on the situation, depends on the level of the athlete fitness level. But even you decrease like 40 to 6% of the volume of the training. Like you can maintain the aerobic fitness levels because your muscle repaired and your energy system are replenished during that time. Those are the main reasons to improve the performance. But as I said, if you have during the tapering period, if you have too much recoveries, like recovery doesn't help to improve the performance, just decrease in the exercise performance. This is kind of the misconcept that people have. Like recovery is good if you have enough trainings before, and also if you have too much recovery actually decrease the performance. So the hard part and the complex part is if you have too much recovery, it decrease the performance. But if you don't have enough recovery, that decrease the performance. So your recovery status need to be in a sweet spot. That really makes this situation difficult and complex. So here, like if the recovery period is a brief and period, that's considered to be tapering. But even though if it's still recovery, like if your period is too long, it's going to be detraining. So you can see on the right figures. So VO2 max start decreasing with just too much recoveries. And this SDH and this oxidative enzyme, this is just enzyme to help exercise endurance performance. Don't worry about too much, and I don't want to go too much in detail about exercise science or physiology right now. But if you have too much recovery, you're pretty much losing all the oxidative enzyme that help for your endurance performance. Okay, so this is a concept, very, very important concept, why we see the performance improvement following the training and recoveries, and if too much recovery is not helping to improve the performance. Okay, so this is orange is the fatigues, and blue is the fitness levels, and gray is the performance level. So in summaries, after the trainings, okay, training increase the fatigue as well, but training also increase the fitness levels. So after the training, you can see both increasing fatigue, increasing the fitness. So pretty much increasing the fatigue mask the the improvement of the fitness because you are just get fatigued. But if you have recovery after the exercise trainings, your fatigue is going to be dissipated earlier than you are faster than losing your fitness levels. So during the recovery period, after a certain period of time, you are losing the fitness levels pretty quickly. It's kind of weird concept, and it's not widely recognized. But if you have recoveries, like if after a certain period of time of the recovery, your fitness level start decreasing. But it's the level of decreasing the fitness level is way slower than the level of fatigue dissipations. So that's why if you have like just a little bit longer period of the times, your fatigue levels getting lower super quickly, and your fitness level going to be lower slowly. That's why net balance of the performance improve. That's how we using that's the tapering period. That's how our performance improves. So recovery period misconcept is recovery period fitness level still decreasing just a little bit during the recovery period, but net performance increase because the level of the fitness decrease is slower than the level of fatigue decreasing. Okay, this is the concept of the recovery. This is the interactions between the fatigue fitness and the performance / training and recovery.
Hey, Yaski, we had one question from John Palladini.
Yeah.
Oh, hello guys. Thanks for catching that. I just had a question about the previous slide and the data that was presented, and I was trying to infer something from that. So, is this based off of individuals that are not training at all in this study? They've stopped training completely? Is that what this data is
Yes,
reflecting?
correct. Yeah. So when after they trained and after like individual received adaptation from the training, they losing all the adaptations.
Okay, so then based on this information, it would be a reasonable conclusion to say that if you are to taper, you actually don't want to exceed more than that 2-week time frame because you will see a drop in that VO2, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So it depends on the fitness level. So if you are like normally like elite athlete, high fitness athlete tend to you can maintain like fitness level longer with recovery period. So normally like 3 weeks is I would say average, and if you are less fit individuals, like 2 weeks ish, sometimes 1 week, but some people can maintain like 3 to 4 weeks. So it's really depends on the situation, like what kind of training you do before those kind of stuff. But in general, it's like 3 weeks is the max to maintain for the tapering.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So this is not this is just wanted to tell the real data from the sports team. So this is not the endurance activities, but this is soccer performance and recovery data. But the concept is same. I just wanted to tell the concept here. So this is from the NCAA D1 team. I think they are going to the national champion NCAA tournament. That's the level they are working. And this is the season 1 to 1, 3, 7, 12, 14 weeks. And don't worry about the too much detailed stuff. But like the black solid line is the hardware variability, which reflects the recovery and readiness status. And dot line is training load. Okay, so training load start decreasing around the 7 weeks because that's the they started like reducing the load about around the 7 weeks of the seasons. But the point here is, so when the team started decreasing the training load, you can see improvement in the heart variability, which is the metrics of the readiness and recovery. So you can see improvement in the recovery and readiness. So they are ready for the performance, which is good. This is because like around the conference championship of the suckers in NCAA Division 1s. But the issue is, so this is 14 is around the regional and the NCAA tournament game. So probably you want to see the peak performance here, highest readiness and recovery here. But this team started the recoveries, or this started decreasing the performance earlier than they should. They should have. So first few weeks, because of lower training load, you can see improvement of the readiness. But since this team started earlier than they should have, and training load is still maintained low, they started. You can see the readiness and recovery status getting low. So if you have you feel like you are giving that recoveries to your bodies, and you feel like your body is getting more recovered and ready for the performance, but that's not the case. If you have too much recoveries, you are losing adaptation and readiness or performance. So it's really need to have optimal performance during the optimal you need a good balance of the recovery and training. And if you have too much recovery, you cannot see the peak performance when you want to see the peak performance.
Hey, Yaki, can I add something to that last slide?
Yeah.
Just two little stories. I had an athlete come to me 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they're using the Whoop data, and they said, "Yeah, Mo, my recovery's been pretty good. My heart rate variability is around 18 or 20." And I said to them, "That's not right." So I just wanted to point out the y-axis over here. You see that they're starting with their heart rate variability a little more than 60, and as they're resting, they're going up towards 100. So just have an idea of those values. So as you rest, your heart rate variability should be getting higher. So a higher heart rate variability means more rested, and a lower one is going to be less rested. So if someone comes up to you and says, "Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. It's 20, 25," that's not a very good heart rate variability, and they're probably wrong with that stat. So that's just number one. And number two, I think that you can find a lot of parallels here with Tour de France style race teams. A lot of them will train with high volume during the off season. So if you think about weeks 1 and 3 as the base season, the off season, you see that the training load is high. And then as they get closer to race competition, they're decreasing a lot of that volume. So I just saw the parallel there with triathlon and cycling, and I wanted to point that out. Thanks, Yaski.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I have from the endurance team data as well here. So this is not the heart rate variability. This is the resting heart rate. This resting heart rate is also another metrics you can use to track the heart recovery status. And resting heart rate is a black. And dot line is a slow wave sleep. So slow wave sleep is the sleep phase that you need in order to get the recoveries. Okay, so here, there's a lot of fluctuation of the resting heart rate recovery status here and what I want to tell here is, if you're, I don't want to blame anything like the coach. That's not the point of these topics right now. But at the end of the seasons, you want to see the highest performance and recoveries, because it's really hard because you already work through the older seasons. But the biggest competition in endurance cross country athlete is at the end of the season, because you want to see the max performance there at the national conference or regional conference or target race at the end of the season. Normally the target race is at the end of the season. So if it's really important to track over the course of the seasons, and if you can see here, maybe this was the peak for this season for these teams, because that was the lowest resting heart rate and recovered probably good, and but it start increasing again at the end of the season. So this is you can see tracking. And interestingly, this is just side topic, but body is so amazing. And you can see here around here, when the you can see pretty much similar trend for the resting heart rate and slow wave sleep. You cannot control the amount of slow wave sleep pretty much, but body actually induce more slow wave sleep because body needs recovery. So you can see here going up and resting heart rate higher means you need recoveries or you don't have enough recovery. And when you don't have enough recovery, body induces a slow wave sleep modes in order to get the recovery. So body is working around in order to get the recoveries, but you just need to think about the training as well.
I had a quick question on the
Yep.
resting heart rate because
Yeah.
I have the opposite. I think, in my experience, my resting heart rate will go down and
During
when I'm overdoing it. So like
Yes.
I've noticed that my resting heart rate will hit like 35, and then I always think it's because I'm getting in better shape, and then like a week later I'm just done.
Yes.
So how often do you see that?
It's really complex. Like, yes, training adaptation, that's one of the training adaptation. Lowering resting heart rate is a big training adaptation, which is good. But it's like balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So there is I didn't talk about too much in detail. So there is two type of overtraining. One is sympathetic and one is parasympathetic. So if you are in a parasympathetic overtraining, your resting heart rate gets lower because of that parasympathetic overtrainings. But there is a possibility. But in general, if you have lower heart rate, that's good.
Yeah,
But
no, mine is definitely an overtraining, and I always miss it because I always think it's a good thing.
yes,
And
so
then,
yes, that's
and then I get caught.
yes, probably that's like the parasympathetic overtraining.
Yep.
But that's really it's really hard to tell. Like that's why it's important to monitor both trainings and the recovery at the same time. Just single value doesn't tell anything sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a monitoring, like passive recovery and the fatigue can be used. That's simple stuff. You don't have to spend money to track like with fancy monitoring device. But sometimes like passive recovery is not reflect to the actual physiological recovery. That's the difficult part here. But it's better than nothing. So and perceived recovery and fatigue level is of course important for the performance. So one of the component of the overtraining is you feel fatigued and you don't want to do exercise or you cannot enjoy the exercise. And of course, the motivation is part of the big part of the performance improvement. So it's important to perceive the recovery and the fatigues, like how you feel each day, how you feel after the trainings. But the one key note here is there is a huge gap between perceived recovery and the actual physiological recovery, which already data is showing. That's why it's important to do the objective recovery and monitoring. There are so many ways to do the recoveries, to assess the recovery, but the most common way is heart rate variability and resting heart rates. And as resting heart rate variability, higher heart rate variability is better, and that means increasing the recovery and readiness. Like in a research academic field and also athlete monitoring field, like no matter what kind of sports, endurance sports, individual sports, or team sports, heart rate variability is the most common metrics people use in order to track the recoveries. But its difficulty here is there is no set values that could showing the good or bad. It's everything is between subject, between individual. So for some athlete, heart variability 100 is a good values. But for some athlete, 100 of the heart variability is not good values. So you have to see and you have to check the change on the heart variabilities. If your heart variability like at the baseline is 50s, and if your heart variability increase to the 100, that's good sign. Your readiness improves and the trainings induce appropriately the adaptations. But if your heart variability is 150 at the baseline and your heart variability goes down to 100, that means you are losing your recovery is not enough, your readiness is not high, and your body doesn't adapt. Even though it's same 100 the number is same, heart variability is 100, but like what data showing is totally different. So you cannot compare the heart variability between individual. You just need to compare heart variability within subject, and you have to track over the course of the training period. And resting heart rate is compared to heart rate variability, resting heart rate is like normally like smaller range, fit in a smaller range. 35 to 45 is normally the good resting heart rate for the endurance athletes. And maybe sometimes 50, but it depends on the individual too. And that's why I wanted to mention here need individual. So I don't want to talk about too much, but like Whoop provide the heart rate variability and resting heart rate on the also all other sleep metrics and recovery metrics. And the center picture is Aura. Aura does the same pretty much same things. And on the top right corner is a polar heart rate. Polar heart rate does provide the heart rate variability and resting heart rate as well. So this is just one like suggestions or slash like something people can do using the objective recovery monitoring. Okay, at the end of the day, people care about the performance and the heart rate variability and resting heart rate showing if you are ready, if you are high readiness or you are in the overtrained. That's why people are using the heart rate variability and the resting heart rate. Heart rate variability, like research is showing heart rate variability is correlated with the change in exercise performance, or like if you are seeing the higher heart rate variability before the competition, that means you have, and normally people can increase exercise performance. And lower resting heart rate associated with the higher exercise performance in general. And the take home from this talk is it's all about the balance between training and recovery. For both training and recovery, too much and too little are bad. You just need to be spot on for both training and recoveries. That's why you need to monitor both these two items. Overtraining decrease the performance for longer period of time. Overreaching is short period of time, but you can improve the performance after that. And from the recovery standpoint, even though it's same recovery, if it's brief period, that's tapering. But if you have longer recovery period, that's the training, you are losing the adaptations. And the key here is like recovery needs to be individualized. It's just like number doesn't tell normally anything. You just need to compare within subject and track over the course of the seasons. And again, like as David said, I'm always happy to take any questions at any time through the email or DM on the Twitters. And if you want any like individual consultant for the training monitoring or recovery or like heat hydration stuff, I'm happy to talk to you individually. So you can send the email to me or you can DM me anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Yaski. Yeah, to that point, Yaski is actually managing a lot of data remotely for our laboratory during one of our Department of Defense studies. He's managing all of the heat acclimation data. So, if you need someone to look at your data, I'm looking at a couple of you on this list that I know would probably be interested, and you want someone to help you track this information and maybe look at your recovery and your fitness over time, Yaski can do that remotely, and he's really good at it. So I would emphasize to use him as an asset for being on this team. So thanks, Yaski. And if you don't mind, I'll ask the first question just because I was talking to an athlete who's currently listening about this. He was asking me about heat versus cold, and he was figuring out if he should get a cold tub or a sauna for recovery, and he was wondering which one was better for recovery. And I was talking to him about talking to Dr. Lee in our lab about hormone profiles when you submerge yourself in ice water after exercise and what that might do to the hormones that actually help you heal. But is there anything you can talk about in terms of cold water immersion, cold ice, and the difference between ice and heat, and possible like recovery post and right post after exercise?
Yeah, so it's like the purpose is totally different. Cold water immersion, yeah, accelerate the recovery, like decrease the inflammations. Depends on what kind of cooling method you're using, cryotherapies or like cold water immersions. But yeah, like data is showing decrease in the soreness, like decrease in the inflammations, those kind of stuff happening like following the cold cooling. So that's really good method for the recoveries. But increasing the exposure is totally different. It's more like increasing the heat acclimation. So the purpose is totally different. But like only the reason I can think of, like outside of the heat acclimations, like having the hot bath is increasing the parasympathetic nervous system and increasing the blood flow, and you can release all the waste from muscle to the you can pretty much extract all the waste from the muscle. That's a good recovery point. The advantage of being in a hot following the exercise, and maybe like you can, it's same like you can have a hot tub at the end of the day. You feel so relaxed, and because that's like your body is going to be more parasympathetic domains, which is really good for the recovery's purpose. So it's just like different purpose, and like a hot bath can be both recoveries and the heat acclimations. But like the goal of even though we call recoveries, the goal is different from like exposing to the hot bath versus like cold water immersion, and the timing should be different either as well.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Does anybody else want to ask a question? We have 10 minutes here. All right, John, I see your hand up.
I don't want to hijack this, so if anybody else wants to ask a question, please go for it. But I know that you did some research in the past